Welcome to the Impact Business Show. I'm your host, Annalise Warren, a marketing agency CEO, business strategist, digital marketing mentor, wife, and mama of 4 little ones. Stay tuned for conversations with successful, purpose-driven business leaders, as well as practical marketing strategies that you can action right away. We are here to help you master your marketing, build your business, and change the world. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome back. With us today is Walli Miller. Walli is a first-generation college student, daughter of an immigrant, and a self-made millionaire who is committed to helping high achievers reach their financial goals and design a life that they love. Yay. But Walli wasn't always a financial wizard. Now that she's committed to using her powers for good by helping others take control of their finances. Welcome to the show, Walli.
Hi, Annalise. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a great conversation.
I'm really excited. Now, tell us about that. What does it mean that you weren't always a financial wizard? How did you get here? How did you get to be teaching people about money?
Yeah, so I am a financial coach now, and I love to help people, particularly high achieving professionals who feel overwhelmed by the thought of budgeting and saving and wealth building. They're like, finances, money, what? It can feel very overwhelming. And in some ways, I was always a little bit of a money nerd in that I would read any articles or books or listen to anything on the radio when it came talking about how to make money, how to grow money, but I didn't always understand it. And in my mind, I thought I was pretty good with money. And what being good with money in my mind meant was that I could pay all of my bills. That was if I could pay my bills and I really stayed out of credit card debt, then I was good with money. But it wasn't until I started, I think I was maybe 26 or 27. And here in the United States, I don't know if it's after a decade of working or if it's an age that kicks it off, but I received a statement with all of my earnings for my entire life. So even that job that I had, that summer job that I had at the age of 14 or 15, I had all of my earnings that I had ever made, all the money that I had ever made. And when I took a look at how much I had made from the very first job until that age, my first question was, where in the world did that money go? Because I realized I didn't have anything to show for it. I had a closet full of clothes. I had stacks of shoes. I had some really nice handbags, but I didn't really have anything else to show for it. My bank account balances didn't reflect the amount of money that this statement, this lifetime earnings report stated that I made.
Oh my goodness. I can't believe that. That's really cool. That does not happen here. At least I've never. I think it's enough when you get your yearly one and you're like, whoa. So yeah, I can imagine how much of a shock to the system that would have been. So then what happened from there? What did you decide?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a really good paying job almost straight out of college. It was a couple of years out of school, and I was making about 75, $80,000. Now I was single, no children, nothing. And so it was really the most money that I had ever made. And it was more money than my parents had ever made in one year, right? And so my definition of being good with money was, okay, all of my bills were paid for. So that means I get to spend the rest, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Like, you fulfill your responsibilities and then you just spend the money. But it wasn't until I received that statement that I really realized, wow, I don't really have a lot to show. I don't have anything to show for the amount of money that I made. And I wish that I would say that that was the thing that turned my financial habits around, but it wasn't. But it definitely gave me a pause. A couple of years after that, I was working at a job that I completely loved and felt fulfilled, doing work that really yeah, was really fulfilling, until management changed. And my ideal job went from being the best place to work to a nightmare. And it was at that point that I realized, wow, I don't have much of a choice. I am essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And at that point, I was a six-figure earner. And again, realized I didn't have a whole lot to show for the amount of money that I had. And I didn't have financial freedom. I didn't have financial independence. If I didn't show up to work, I wouldn't get paid. And if I didn't get paid, I was going to lose everything that I had worked so hard for. And it was really at that point when I realized that I kind of had I was stuck at a job that I no longer liked, that wasn't really fulfilling me anymore, that I needed to do something different. And I went into the land of Google to try to figure out, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong with my finances? And I realized that there were a bunch of people doing something called FIRE. Have you heard of this before? The FIRE movement?
I have, but I can't recall what it is.
All right. So FIRE simply stands for Financially Independent, Retire Early. And when I heard that there were people in their 40s who were quitting their jobs, and I'm going to use the term retire early loosely, because essentially what it meant was having that financial independence, that financial freedom to be work optional. By the time they were 40, I knew that I had to do something different and that I was doing something wrong. And so I began to evaluate what was going on. And I realized quite a few things. The first thing that I realized was that I didn't really know my numbers. In my mind, I knew how much money I was getting paid on a salary basis. I knew what my salary was, but I didn't really know how much money I was getting on a monthly basis, right? Wasn't really aware of that. The second thing was I didn't really know what my expenses were. And so not really knowing what my numbers were put me at a huge disadvantage. And so when I began to take a look at what my expenses were, and I really, made a list of all of my needs. So everything like transportation, accommodation, food expenses, cell phone bill, things like that. And I realized, okay, so this is my income. These are what my monthly expenses are. And then what was left over was not what was sitting in my bank account. And so that was the hard part. It was to try to figure out, where was that money going? That money that I wasn't tracking, that money that I wasn't paying attention to, because it wasn't simply enough to just pay my bills on time. I was not saving money, and I wasn't building wealth. I wasn't investing, or I wasn't growing money. And when we talk about investing, there's many ways to invest. You can invest in the stock market. You can invest in real estate. You can invest in businesses as an entrepreneur, right? I wasn't doing any of those three things. I wasn't investing in any way. And so it was at that point that I realized that that was the key factor that I was missing. But conversations about money wasn't normal growing up for me. So talking about investing and building wealth was a foreign concept to me. And I think that that's the state of many of us. There are things that we learn directly from our parents, and some things we learn indirectly from our parents, particularly when it comes, or specifically, since the topic of this show today is about finances, when it comes to money. And so much of our money mindset, which essentially means our habits, our behaviors, our feelings around money, are shaped when we're children. And then we take that into adulthood, and we either have great finance handle on our finances, or we can have some problematic habits.
Yeah, I think that is a process. So how did you then begin to change those habits? And how can we kind of change the way that we think about money if we've been going on this path for, say 30 years, just pulling a number out. how do we begin to change that? Because money's a big thing.
Money is huge, right? Money isn't good or bad, it's neutral, but it's laden with emotions. And so, one of the first things that I did was really get to understand what my numbers were. I wanted to understand how much money was I really bringing home, right? So, after, it wasn't my salary, I wasn't bringing home what my annual salary was after taxes are taken out and all of the fees and healthcare and all of these things get taken out of my paycheck. I really needed to understand how much money I was bringing home. The second thing is really understanding what your expenses are. Where is your money going? Right now, you don't need to write down every single transaction that you do for the rest of your life. But one of the things that I did was try to complete something called a no spend challenge. And a no spend challenge, and you can do this for 7 days, you can do this for a month, is essentially trying not to spend any money that is outside of your must haves, right? So outside of that. And I realized that I couldn't even do 1 day of a no spend challenge because something always would come up, whether it was spending a couple of dollars at the vending machine or stopping for lunch that I didn't, that I hadn't planned for. And I realized that, oh my goodness, I am spending money every single day on these random things. Because it's easy to say when we spend money on large purchases. In my mind, I wasn't buying very expensive things, right? I wasn't spending hundreds of dollars on a pair of jeans, but I had dozens of jeans that were the inexpensive kind. And in my mind, I bought them on sale or on a discount. And so I needed to really understand what were some of my spending triggers. And that could be very different it's going to be different for all of us. Some of my spending triggers were if I was bored, I could be, headed to go fill up at the gas station, put fuel in my vehicle. And all of a sudden I would pass the store and I'm like, oh, let me just stop in to see what's there. I didn't have a plan. I didn't need anything. I wasn't going there with intention, but I was just going to go and browse. And so sometimes just out of sheer boredom, I would stop at a store. And now more than ever, it's so easy to just turn on a computer, open up a web browser, and then start surfing the net, right? And then all of a sudden we become inundated with the promo emails or even ads, right? You look at things one time and now all of a sudden you're seeing ads all over the place. So one of the triggers for me was boredom. Another trigger was if I had a really tough day, right? I talked about how my wonderful job became kind of a toxic work environment. And so one of the ways that I would try to make myself feel better is to buy myself things. And it wasn't just purchasing items like clothes and shoes, but sometimes it was, saying I deserve not to have to make myself food, right? And I want to go out for drinks or I want to go have dinner, whatever the case might be. So sometimes it was out of a negative emotion. Other times it was out of a positive emotion, right? If I had a great day at work, if I had a promotion, if I wanted to celebrate, one of the ways that I also celebrated was by spending money. And so understanding what your triggers are when it comes to spending money is really important. Sometimes it could be out of guilt, right? We can see this with parents, for example, who may not have a lot of time to spend with their children. And so what they want to do is spend money on their children in order to make up for the lack of time. And so really getting clear about what are some of those emotional triggers and how you can pay attention to that is when you are at the checkout counter or even before you click buy now online, is to think about what is going on with your body. How are you feeling at that exact moment? Are you feeling joy? Are you feeling anxiety, right? Are you feeling tense? Are you feeling sadness? Are you bored? Try to take one moment, take a pause and think about what are you feeling at that exact moment. I think one of the most common things is we go to Target to go buy things that we need, right? Toilet paper and paper towels and dish detergent and laundry detergent. And then all of a sudden we end up in an aisle that we had no intention of.
Candle
And
holders and cushions, and you're like, oh, it's so
exactly.
pretty. Oh, I need one of those.
Exactly. And so there's all of these things that surround us. And so just take one moment and see, as you're putting things in the cart, or once you've put them in the cart, think about what is it that you're feeling at that moment. And I would say that those are some of the beginning stages. You used a fantastic phrase on one of your podcasts where you said it's mind over mechanics. And when we think about finances, it's exactly true. Sometimes when we think about finances, we want to focus on the calculations, on the numbers, on the Excel spreadsheets, on the calculators, all these things. And it's really focusing on your mindset first. Think about what your relationship with money is. When I say, Annalise, you are going to be a multimillionaire, how does that make you feel? Listener, if I say you are going to be wealthy, how does that make you feel? Do you believe that? Does that make you cringe? Do you think that that's kind of a fantastical line? Right? I know for me, if someone would have said to me, you are going to be wealthy, I wouldn't have believed it, because in my mind, I wasn't an artist, I wasn't an actor, I wasn't an athlete. So how in the world was I going to build wealth? And I equated rich with meaning wealthy, being wealthy. And I didn't have Lamborghinis, and I didn't have, 6 different houses or mansions or anything like that. And so I equated being rich with being wealthy. And really, only you can define what wealth means to you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many good points. Where do I even dig in? So good. Okay. So I think that falling into your body has been a really big theme for me, and quite a few of these interviews that I've done this year. I think probably before this year, I hadn't even been made aware of that. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't something that I did. It wasn't something that I thought to do. Like, it was a really new concept to me. But it's so powerful, because our body does hold all of that. I think we don't listen. I think we try and logic it out, like, and we've just kind of tuned out from being bodily aware on so many levels. So yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something to kind of highlight and think about. And for me, that goes for everything, like not even outside of these money situations, but to bring it into that as well is going to be really powerful, and hopefully will turn some of us around from the checkout, or pull some things back out of the trolley.
Yeah, and it's also that conversation with yourself, like, what could my money be doing for me, right? When I took a look to see how much money I had made, and I realized that, I said I didn't have anything to show for it. I did have something to show for it. It was my clothes, my shoes, my handbags, but it wasn't aligning with what I valued most. And that was kind of that made me sad. It made me really sad that what I valued most wasn't reflected in how I was spending my money. And so thinking about, what is it that you value most, and is that reflected in how you're spending money, right? They say, show me your credit card statement, show me your bank statement, and I'll tell you what you value. And so this is kind of something that we can do as well, because we want to make sure, there's a difference between, and I tell my clients this all the time: I do not care how you spend your money. What I care about is what you value most, what your financial goals are, what your lifestyle goals are, and I'm going to hold you to that. And if you tell me that what you value most is being able to go on holiday and come back and not be worried about the credit card bill that, the expenses that you just spent, I want to hold you to that. If you tell me what you value most is to be able to pay for your children's college education so that they don't have to work or have student loan debt, which is huge here in America. If perhaps the one of the things that you value most is to be able to purchase your family or your parents a home, or help them retire early, right? Or help them have a healthy retirement. Those are the things that only you can define that's important to you. Is it important to you to leave corporate, the corporate world so that you can, uh, even if it's work at a nonprofit or start your own nonprofit and not have to worry about finances, and you want to be able to fund that without worries, with the financial security and stability that you need. That is what I'm going to hold you accountable to.
So how do we get there? How do we make that shift and look at the numbers and go, okay, this is what I actually need, and now what do I do with the rest?
Love that question. So it's really finding that balance between what you want today and what you're going to need in the future, right? Without forfeiting what you are going to need in the future. And so once you know your numbers, right? So you've had that moment where you've come to the realization of what your accounts look like, right? If you have a stack of mails sitting on your counter because you are afraid to look at those bills, it is time to just confront it, because the worst thing that you can do is ignore it and thinking it's going to go away, and it's not. It's going to make it worse. And so confront those numbers, really understand how much you're making and how much you're actually spending. The path to financial independence is easy, okay? Now, it's simple, not always easy. And it can work in one of two ways. One is sometimes it's an income issue. Sometimes we need to find ways to increase our income in order to help with those expenses. The second way is to reduce expenses, right? It's cutting out those things that is not adding value to our life, that is just causing some of these budget leaks. And so if you can do a combination of those two things, where you're cutting expenses and while also finding ways to increase your income, that is where you're really going to be able to accelerate the path to financial independence. Now, what do you do once you've decreased your expenses, reduce expenses, you've increased your income? What do you do with that inflow of money? Now, here is the magic thing that I had no idea about. Saving money is fantastic. Putting money aside for those emergencies when life happens, because we know it's going to happen, setting money aside and having money in a savings account is step number one. But for long-term planning and long-term goals, saving isn't enough, right? When we think about, okay, I want to have enough money to have a nice, healthy retirement. And I would argue that retirement isn't an age, it's a dollar amount, right? It doesn't matter if you are 40 or 75 or 65. It's not an age, it's a dollar amount. When you have a nest egg of money that will be able to sustain your lifestyle, that will pay on itself, your living expenses, you are essentially work optional at that point, right? So when you have money saved, and I would recommend people save about 3 to 6 months of money saved in an emergency fund. And that's going to depend on a couple different factors. If you have children, I would say 6 to 12 months might be a better option. If you are single and you know that if you lost your job, you could move in with your parents, then maybe having, 2 or 3 months of an emergency fund. When I say that, that might sound really overwhelming, because you're like, oh my goodness, I have to save 3 to 6 months of my monthly income. No, this is of your expenses, right? If everything went kaput, right? If things were to go down, how much money would you need in order to keep the lights on in your house, food on the table, and a roof over your head, right? If we lost our jobs, we probably would cut out things like eating out. We probably would cut out things like getting a haircut. We may cut out things that, add some convenience to our life, add some joy to our life. But if we're out of a job, we're going to make those reductions. And so I would say really think about what your basic essential living expenses are and have about 3 to 6 months of that in a savings account. Now, with the money that you have left over, now, once you have funded that, now is the time to think about, how can I use this money to grow? And this is where we talk about the different investment vehicles, and what investing looks like for you is going to be different than what it looks like to me, right? As I mentioned, it can be investing in real estate or investing in the stock market or investing in a business, but thinking of ways to have that money grow for you so that your $1,000 could grow to $2,000 and your $2,000 could grow to $20,000. How are some ways that you can begin to generate some passive income, um, so that you have that money there for you in the long term?
Yeah, thank you so much for going through all of that. That step-by-step process, I think, really helps to, like, you're right, like you said, make it simple and have step one, expend, like, make sure that you can live well. Step two, put those savings and aside, and step three, do some investments. And I think that that's scary for people, the investment side of things. But again, thank you for mentioning that there are multiple types of investment so that we can pick the type that kind of suits our risk profile the best.
Exactly. One of the other exercises that I did because my issue really was when it came, I was a impulsive shopper. I did a lot of mindless shopping. One of the things that I began to do, especially because I wanted to not have to work, I wanted to reduce the amount of time that I had to work. And one of the things that I did was that if I went to a store and I saw an outfit that I really wanted, right? So this wasn't that I needed, but something that I really wanted. I began to equate how many hours will I have to work in order to purchase this? And I began to equate my time, my energy to the price of that thing. And I think, again, just taking that moment and say, okay, if I want to buy these nice pair of boots, it's going to cost me 4, 5, 2, 6 hours of working. Is it worth it to me? And maybe it is. Awesome. Buy it guilt free. But if you're like, wow, I am going to have to go to a workplace that I do not love for another 3, 4, 5 hours just to afford this, you begin to look at things a little bit differently. Another thing for me was I also grew up in a low income family. And as you mentioned at the top of the episode, I'm a daughter of immigrants, and I grew up in a low income neighborhood, and we didn't really have a lot of money. And I wanted to change the dynamic of my family's financial legacy, and that was really important to me. I didn't want the next generation to also start off in that low income type environment. I wanted to be able to help in the way that I could. I'll give you an example. When I went to university, I had to work 2 jobs. I was working 2 jobs in order to be able to pay, try not to have as much student loans. And of course, the United States is one of the worst when it comes to student debt. But I wanted to be able to reduce the amount of debt and the amount of loans that I would need to take in order to fund my education. And so I had to work 2 jobs, but that also meant that my college experience wasn't a lot of fun. I would go straight from work to school straight to work, homework. And like that was my, the entire time while I was in university. And although I appreciate that experience because it taught me grit, it really gave me, helped me with time management. I also was very exhausted. And I also feel like I missed out on certain, even networking opportunities, right? Some of those professional relationships you start to build even in college, even in university, that I missed out on. And I was saying, if I could help my nieces, my nephews, or future children that I have so that they don't have to do that maybe, okay, they'll have a little job, to help fund some of their expenses, but so that they don't have to sort of kill themselves while they're going to school, why not do that, right? Why not be able to, if I have a relative who has a fantastic idea and just needs a little bit of money, and we're talking, we're not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sometimes it's just a couple of $100, $1,000, a couple $1,000 to help people get started on a mission, on a dream that they may have, to change the world. And if I could say, look, I know that you're super passionate about it. I believe in you. Here's something to get you started. Why wouldn't I want to do that? And so those were some of my reasons why. And I would say that particularly for your listeners, right, who want to make an impact, who want to change the world, who want to do more, our resources are limited when we're thinking about time, when we're thinking about money, but it's how can we maximize those to make the most impact possible.
Yeah, it is. And I think that that impact, that generational wealth, that thinking beyond ourselves, I think it starts with ourselves. I know for me, I wanted to not have to go to work. I started my business because I wanted to be around my children more. And now you can hear that I'm working around them. So dream come true, right? But it started just with me. I just wanted to be able to earn enough so that I didn't have to put my children in care. And then once those bills are paid, then I was like, oh, hang on, like I need to do more. I can do more. How can I do more? So you offer people, you teach people how to do this, and it all starts with a roadmap, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When we think about finances, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, right? We think we need to focus solely on the numbers. And I really believe that you really have to work on your relationship with money first. So much of what we believe around money, whether it's an abundance mindset or maybe even a poverty mindset that we may have, or a scarcity, not a poverty mindset, but like a scarcity mindset, that there's just not enough money in the world for me. Some of that is really ingrained in us. We live with that without really knowing where it came from. And we don't really understand our habits with money. And so I like to always focus on that, because you can't think about what your financial goals are without really understanding even what is important to you and what your wealth definition is. And so I've created a free downloadable workbook that is available to your audience, and it's called the Roadmap to Financial Wellness. And yes, you'll find some sheets there where you'll enter some numbers to really get to know your numbers, but there's also some exercises there that will help you as you answer those questions as to, what does wealth mean to me? What is it? Why are certain things important to me? Why, for example, in your case, Annalise, why do I want to have more freedom over my time? Is it to watch Netflix and Amazon Prime? No, it's because you wanted to spend more time with your child, right? You wanted to be able to be as present of a parent as you possibly could. For me, it's traveling, wanting to explore different places and food and see different art and architecture. That was really important to me, to have different cultural immersions, right? So traveling was really important to me. So really figuring out, why are certain things important to you? We didn't even touch on debt, right? And how having debt, and sort of even before you can save and before you can invest, like, how do I even tackle the amount of debt that I have? But really understanding, how did we get here? How did that debt come to be in the first place is super important. So you can visit my website, financiallythriving.com, to get a copy of the Roadmap to Financial Wellness. I'm also active on Instagram, and you can just click the link in the bio and get the Roadmap to Financial Wellness as well.
Thank you, Walli. It's such a big topic, and you're right, we only scratched the surface. Maybe we'll need to do a round two. But thank you very much for coming on the show today. Thank you for sharing everything that you have learned. Well, the concept, some of the things that you have learned over the last few years, and given us these really powerful questions. I think it's the really powerful questions that we need to be asking ourselves, and really through that lens of why, and what do I actually want, and am I walking towards that, or am I kind of walking up a different mountain? So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Annalise.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Impact Business Show. 2 things you should know before you go. First, come and join the party. I'm live with free marketing training in the Social Marketing Method Facebook group every single week. That's where you can ask questions and get the answers you need to simplify your strategy and amplify your income. Go to annalisewarn.com/group to join and come and network with an incredible community of like-minded business owners. Now, second, if you have got any value from this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share it out on your socials. Your support helps us reach more purpose-driven entrepreneurs and increase our impact in the world. Thank you, and I will see you next week. Bye.